Now I'm going to take you all the way back to Marit's slide from the beginning, and when she outlined everything that is covered in the agreement and what we were trying to do in the beginning. There are the 4 freedoms. There's also the horizontal and flanking policies, a great name. And one of the things that Marit had on there was cohesion and the EEA and Norway grants. And that is a really important example of how this goes beyond just being sort of an economic agreement, but it's also about us collaborating and bringing joy and prosperity. There's a strong focus on joy and prosperity. And we're very happy to have with us Ragna Fidstol. She is the Managing Director of the EEA and Norway grants. Ragna, the floor is yours.
Can someone put on my slides? Excellent. Good morning, everyone. It's still morning because you haven't had lunch yet. How many in this room has heard about the EEA and Norway grants? Okay, that's amazing. Well, I am the managing director of this very secret organization called the FMO. But actually, we are part of the EFTA Secretariat. We occupy 2 of the floors in this beautiful building. We are about to close what is the current phase of the EEA and Norway grants, and we will soon start a new funding period. And I have been asked to say a little bit about the new funding period, but I thought I would just start with some of the basics of what it is. So why do we have the EEA and Norway grants? Actually, the starting point is the internal market and the idea that has been in the EU since the beginning. To make an internal market work, there can't be too much disparities between the countries. If you really have poor countries, poor regions, it will be difficult to make this internal market work. So the cohesion policy is as old as the EU. And when the EFTA states negotiated the EEA agreement in 1994, it was then also a clause in the EEA agreement that the parties would then also contribute to reducing the social and economic disparity. And it is said that it's to promote trade and economic relations. So there was a direct link that we also have to contribute as the EU to make this market work, and that our funds should be additional to what the EU is doing themselves, to the same respect. And in the beginning, 30 years ago, there were more countries on the EFTA side, and there were fewer on the other side. So I think it was like 5 countries receiving funds. But then in 2004, with the EU enlargement, everything changed. So this is the map we have today, where you can see that we are only 3 countries on the donor side and 15 countries receiving funds. And what do these 15 countries have in common? Well, they are all below 90% of the EU average when it comes to gross national income per capita. That is kind of the criteria that's used. So if you look at the map, you see that there are some old EU member states, like Portugal and Greece. They have been receiving funds since the beginning in 1994. And then you have actually all the new member states that joined after 2004. Those who joined in 2004, those who joined in 2007, that was Bulgaria and Romania, and the latest who joined in 2013, Croatia. And maybe next time we will have even more, who knows? But we have a couple of countries who graduated, like Spain used to be one of the receiving countries. They are no longer among us because they became too rich. And then when it comes to how the funds are distributed, that's actually based on a formula the EU is using themselves. So that's related to number of inhabitants, economic indicators, the size of the country, and also disparities within the country. So that is not something we're negotiating, but something that's given by the EU side. And this graph shows that it's Poland who is definitely the biggest recipient, and followed by Romania, and then you have Malta and Cyprus as on the other end. And we also this time had 2 regional funds that went a bit beyond the normal beneficiary states, also outside the EU, so the kind of neighboring countries. So this is why, and then what are we funding? In the EEA agreement itself, it talks about reducing economic and social disparities. But based on the EEA agreement, we have to negotiate every time a new agreement directly with the EU, a protocol to the EEA agreement. And in there are 2 other elements that have been added. And one is that these funds should also be used to strengthen the bilateral relations between the 3 donor states and those receiving funds. And very importantly, that all activities shall be based on common European values, and they are listed. It's democracy, rule of law, and minorities, etc., and non-discrimination. And this will also be the basis for the future financial mechanism. If anything, I think the emphasis on the values will increase. And this is based on the developments in Europe, where we see that there is a backsliding of rule of law and also shrinking civic space, threats to the democracy in many of our countries that we work with. So in a nutshell, just to give you a bit the size, the amounts, this current mechanisms we are in is 2.8 billion euros in total. We are working, or we're supposed to work with 15 beneficiary states. Unfortunately, the donor states could not agree with Hungary on how to do this, so they opted out this time. We are working across a number of sectors, so there are 23 different potential program areas, and altogether we are having 95 programs in these 14 countries, plus the 2 regional programs. And it's actually really a whole of government approach, because we are working across almost all sectors in society, except, I would say, agriculture, fisheries, and defense. But we have programs in innovation and research, education, which is, of course, an important factor to create growth and to reduce the economic disparities. But we also have programs related to poverty reduction and social inclusion, working minorities. We have program in many countries on the Roma people, who is really one of the most marginalized populations in Europe. We have programs working on the green transition, both environment, energy, climate change, and then a whole sector related to softer issues, culture, civil society, human rights, good governance. And in civil society, there is a requirement that at least 10% needs to be targeted to civil society. So we have been funding since 2004. We have been actually keeping civil society in Central Europe alive, because there have not been that many other funding sources, and that has been a very important support to maintain a vibrant civil society, which is a precondition for democracy, actually. And also in the justice sectors, we have a number of different programs. So you can see that the menu is quite broad, and we are addressing all kinds, the whole society. We are not so much funding infrastructure like the EU does, because our funds is about 1% of what the EU is funding through their structural funds. So we are small in a sense, but we are complementing what the EU is doing, and we are working a lot on more soft measures, on capacity building and institutional cooperation, etc. And as I said, it's also based on this bilateral, that we should strengthen bilateral relations. And there are thousands of entities from the donor states involved in this cooperation. We have about 20 institutions, they're all in here. I don't expect you to read it, but just showing a bit the magnitude of this, that are involved in more long-term strategic cooperation with counterparts in these countries. And we have 3 international organizations. That's quite interesting as well, that we are working with Council of Europe, the OECD Public Governance Department, and the Fundamental Rights Agency in EU. And for them, this is a very interesting cooperation they have with us as well. They don't have that with anyone else, they tell us. And they are also then helping us on these human rights, democracy, good governance related topics. And we have more than thousands enterprises, NGOs, public institutions, etc., that are involved in this cooperation. In addition, we also gather the programs we work with in different countries for joint events and meetings. So we are creating networks across all these countries. So through these grants, this is a very interesting feature of the grants, new solutions and knowledge and ways of working are being developed and applied across Europe. So this is something that is really benefiting also the 3 donor states. And then a little bit about how this is maybe a bit more technical, but I talked about this broad menu. Based on this broad menu, we negotiate with each country which kind of programs they would like to implement it there. So it doesn't mean that every country is implementing everything. It depends a bit on the size and their capacity and their interest, and also how this complement what they receive fund from the EU side. And then they develop concrete programs, and in most cases there are open calls for proposals for the projects. We can also sometimes agree on some, what we call a predefined project. And then in the end, you have the time for implementation. So altogether, this forms a 10-year cycle, 7 years commitment period, and then additional 3 years of implementation. And that's why we call this funding period 2014-21. But we are still implementing it, but this is the last year of implementation. Next year, we will start summarizing all the results we have achieved. And as you see, I said there was a whole of government, no, whole of country, society approach in a way that we are working both with the national, local authorities, civil society, private and public enterprises, research, education, social partner. So reaching out to all parts of society. In the next period, we will try to build on what has been working well this time. One of the strengths of the grants is that we have been more or less in the same sector for 20 years. So we can see this long-term investment paying off. But of course, we are looking at what are the current European challenges and how we can help addressing them. And we also look to what is the EU updated policies. So we have now been working on preparing the next mechanism, and the slogan will be that we are working together for a green, democratic and inclusive Europe. So we will address the green transition, we will address the democratic backsliding, we will work on information integrity. That is a bit new, but that is really one of the issues that is threatening democracy today. We will continue working on inclusion of minorities and work to create resilient societies. So, but very much this will be building on what we are doing today. So I just wanted to show you a few examples concretely what we do. We have all together in these 95 programs and 2 regional funds, we have more than 6,800 projects. I just wanted to show you 3 to give you a flavor of what this could be. We have been working together with the Council of Europe and together with the Norwegian Minister of Justice and other actors in Norway to promote the Istanbul Convention, which is combating gender-based and domestic violence. And in many of these countries, like in the Czech Republic, there are no services to help give free psychological or legal assistance to victims of domestic and sexual violence. So there we have health building centers that provide this kind of free services. But this is in the context where we are working also more on the political level on how to make sure that the countries sign up to the Istanbul Convention and work on other parts of that convention as well. In education, this is a concrete example from Slovenia, where we are working together with 11 partners altogether from Slovenia, Norway, and Iceland on how to use digital technology in professional training and how you have then to change the whole pedagogic and how you can integrate this in a way in professional and vocational training. And that is again just one of many projects done within broader education programs. And in the Baltic states, we have been working a lot on historic pollution, which is part of the Soviet legacy of industrial or military sites, and where we're actually cleaning up sites together also with experts from Norway mostly. And this is just 3 projects. There are thousands of more projects. So it was just to give you a kind of concrete flavor of what this is all about. So in the next period, we will continue then different programs on the green transition, on democracy, rule of law and human rights, and on creating resilience and social inclusion. For those who are interested, we have a good website where you can find a lot of information made by our excellent communication team. And we also have a portal. It's 100% transparent. So we have a portal where you can interactively seek out all programs, all projects, where all information is available. Thank you so much.